Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I feel really blessed to have the opportunity to introduce Swami Tattwamayananda ji. He's currently the minister in charge of Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, which was originally founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1900. He underwent traditional training in Hindu scriptures, Sanskrit, Vedic, and Vedantic literature for many years from his early days. He served in various centers of Ramakrishna order in India as editor, publisher, and teacher of Sanskrit Advaitic texts such as Sri Shankaracharya's commentaries on Prasthanatraya, the fundamental Sanskrit texts of Vedanta philosophy, Buddhism, and Indian philosophy. Before coming to the United States in January 2012, he was teaching Sanskrit, Vedantic scriptures, and Indian philosophy at the training center in Belur Math, the institution that trains the monks of Ramakrishna order at the headquarters of Ramakrishna Mission, Kolkata, India. Apart from his traditional education, the Swami has received modern university education in English literature, psychology, European history, and Western philosophy. He's frequently invited for lectures on yoga, Vedanta, and traditional Hindu scriptures for participating in interfaith dialogues. So it is really our privilege to have you here in Trinity College, and we are most welcome. So with this, I'll hand it over to start your lecture today.
Thank you. Thank you. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Sri Ramakrishna, the supreme spiritual teacher, who is the original source of the spiritual tradition that I happen to belong to. So my pronouns to my obeisance to the great spiritual teacher. The topic, as you all know, is yoga, a way of life. Now, before entering the topic, yoga, just a few words about this tradition of yoga. There are three great teachers behind the yoga tradition. Patanjali, the author of the sutras. Sutra means a small little statement, which is comprehensive, which is capable of expressing a vast number of ideas, which is put in a small little form, maybe a few words or maybe a few letters. And Patanjali is the author of these sutras. Altogether, there are 191 sutras divided into 4 chapters. That is Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, then Vibhudipada, and Kaivalyapada. These are 4 quarters, 4 chapters that constitute Yoga Sutra text. After Patanjali, the other great teacher who comes in the lineage is Vyasa, who wrote an extensive commentary on Yoga Sutras. Without Vyasa's commentary, you won't know anything about the actual meaning or implication of the Yoga Sutras. And the next in line is Shankaracharya, who wrote a commentary on Vyasa's commentary on Yoga Sutras, called Vivarana. So there is an ancient verse that we are all expected to recite at the beginning of any discussion on Yoga Sutra. Stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram cha Munitrayam Kartru Sutrasya Bhashisya Kramat Vivaranasya. It's an ancient verse which you find any great authentic discussion on Yoga Sutras. You'll find the great teacher. Any genuine authentic teacher will begin the discourse with this statement. Means attributes to the great author of the sutras, Patanjali, and commentator of the sutras, that is Vyasa, and the great super commentator on Vyasa's commentary called Shankaracharya. That is Munitraya, means 3 great spiritual teachers who constitute the trinity of yoga tradition. As I mentioned, Yoga Sutra text contains 101 sutras. There are a few other versions, 195. You find a slight little different versions of Yoga Sutra literature, but generally this is the classification. The sutra itself, the text itself begins, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is defined as a way of controlling, restraining, and refining our thoughts, emotions, and feelings, which are technically called vrittis. So, how to regulate, control, and refine our emotional system, our thoughts and ideas and feelings. In other words, how to turn our mind into a best friend. This is the whole purpose of Yoga Sutra. Normally, our mind is not always our best friend. Our mind can be our terrible enemy. You frequently, the commentators give this example. Suppose you want to do something that you know it is most essential for you. So tomorrow onwards, you take a decision. You should go for a walk half an hour in the morning. You decide. When the morning comes, or rather, I will start it tomorrow, not today, or maybe in the evening. So this kind of procrastination, I mean, this conflict between what we need to do and what we sincerely want to do and what our mind allows us to do. It's a great conflict, you find. If we can always have our mind to cooperate with us what we want to do, there will be no problems in the world. At least many of the problems can be easily resolved. Our mind sometimes becomes our worst enemy. So, how to turn your own mind into your best friend? That's the whole purpose of Yoga Sutra. Now, you may ask this question, what about standing on your head? One may ask this question. Actually, Patanjali says he wants you to stand on your feet, in your strong feet, how to be always in a state of perfect tranquility, peace, and calmness. How to stand on our feet firmly, not standing on our head. Surprisingly, the entire Yoga Sutra text devotes only one sutra for yoga asana, that is sthira saukhyam sthiryam saukhyam, sthira sukham asana, means how to remain in a state of perfect calmness for a long time without our mind complaining about itself, how to remain in a state of tranquility and peace. So sthiryam and saukhyam. Sthiryam means you should be able to sit for a long time continuously without being disturbed. And you should be able to enjoy sitting like that. So when you can be uh, uh, in a state of perfect tranquility and peace and calmness, and we do it for a long time, that's the whole purpose of yoga asana according to Patanjali. And Patanjali devotes only one sutra for yoga asana. All other sutras are devoted to uh, turning our mind into our best friend. So, in other words, Yoga Sutra, yoga is nothing but the science of turning our own mind into our best friend. So, Patanjali analyzes the mental world into two categories. One is our experience. Our experience, not necessarily our inner experience, also an experience that comes from outside. For example, we face a situation which is very disturbing from the external world, maybe traffic jam, for example. It is a example of problem coming from outside, an experience coming from outside, or our hunger, anger, anxiety, worry. These are problems coming from inside. So this is one category, that is our experience. The second category is how we respond to our own experience, how we respond to a situation that can create conflict. Anxiety can create serious problems. But how do we respond to our own anxiety? A traffic jam can be a problem. How we respond to our own anxiety. So Patanjali says these are two different aspects of the mental world, our experience and our own reaction to our experience. So Patanjali is teaching. Patanjali is the great author of Yoga Sutra. So yoga helps us to learn how to respond to our situation. At the same time, not to be shattered by a difficult situation. We must face it, but at the same time, we should face it without being shocked by a problem. And in fact, the first lesson in Yoga Sutra is called Yamas and Niyamas. Most of you must have heard of this. These are the first and second part of Ashtanga Yoga. Yama means ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Niyama means sauja, sandosha, tapas, swadhyaya, isapadidhana. Well, I shall just mention the Sanskrit names because I would like to refer to the original text and not just go about giving the English translation. But I will translate everything clearly. Ahimsa means non-violence. Satya means truthfulness. And then asteya means absence of greed and absence of desire for things that belong to others. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya means pure life, and Abhirigraha means non-possessiveness. And the other category, the five disciplines, Saucha, Santosha, Tapaswadhyaya, Isapadidhana means inner purity, then contentment, then feeding our mind with good foods. All these are some of the disciplines that Patanjali recommends. Now, one important recommendation for Patanjali is feeding our mind with good food. This is a very important recommendation that comes from Patanjali. Feeding our mind with good food. When we eat bad food, with toxic food, we fall sick and we die. Body is affected. But what about the food for the mind? When we eat bad mental food, our mind falls sick. So anxieties, worries, and phobias, all these are different problems normally mentioned in books on psychiatry, delusions. All these are, according to yoga system, the after effects of eating bad mental food. So he says the first important principle in yogic way of life is always to feed our mind with good food. And food for the mind is thoughts, emotions, and feelings, associations. So we can have good food, reading, listening to great ideas, association with good people. All these are different ways of feeding our mind with good food. So when we feed our mind with good food, our mind is satisfied. It's called santosha, means contentment. Contentment is not happiness or joy. Contentment is a state where the mind is happy with itself. It doesn't require, it doesn't demand anything else. That's why one of the Ayurvedic textbooks is called um, Charaka Sutras, a well-known book, ancient Indian school of medicine. Scott. He says, what is the definition of healthy mindedness? So Charaka says, Prasanna Mendriya Manaha Sosthaga iti abhidhiyate. So a mind which is naturally calm and quiet, a mind which is helping you when you want to do something good, which is not creating stumbling blocks, not obstacles. That mind is your best friend. So a mind is which is full of contentment, and also a mind which is always in a state of tranquility and peace. Such a mind is a healthy mind. So the word used in the Ayurvedic medical science and also in the Yoga Sutra is this the swasthyam means a state where your mind is not complaining. We can physically, when we have stomach pain, our stomach is telling us, I'm here. When you have a pain on your right hand is telling you, I'm here. Suppose your mind doesn't remind you of its own existence, that is a sign of mental health. When we try to meditate, for example, when we try to meditate, after 16 hours of hard work in the evening, when you come home, you try to meditate. you are not able to sit quietly for a long time. Because when you try to meditate, all the experiences that you already experienced that day in the office, workplace, traffic jams, your mind is agitated, your mind is full of thoughts related to all the experiences you already had that day. You are not able to meditate. So mind is facing conflicts when you try to meditate. You come out of the meditation room, you switch on the TV, mind is very happy. So mind is happy when it is connected to some external objects. Mind is unhappy, it creates conflicts when you try to turn the mind away from external things. That's because mind has eaten a lot of toxic food. So it is agitating when you try to meditate. So one of the commentaries, Shankaracharya says, before anyone trying to practice dharana and dhyana, these are the sixth and seventh stages of Ashtanga Yoga. Dharana means concentration. Dhyana means meditation. So when we try, before we try to meditate or concentrate, we should lift our mind to a higher level. Uh, you can listen to devotional music. You can read a very wonderful book on spirituality, or you can have a conversation on some higher spiritual topics. So the mind is lifted to a higher level before you try to meditate. Then mind will cooperate with you. So that's why Patanjali says we should be careful with what we eat, not only with the body, not only what we feed the body with, but also what we feed our mind with. So we should try to uh, uh, devote our time to help our mind to be friendly with us. So that's why the sadhana pada begins with a very interesting sutra, that is tapaswadhyaya ishar pranidhanani kriya yoga. This is very important. Kriya yoga, according to Patanjali, is different from what is the popular kriya yoga. That's a different subject. So Patanjali says one should try to do some noble work physically. If you cannot meditate, don't meditate. Read a good book. If you cannot read a good book, try to do some good work. You can clean the room. You can do something, any activity which is an unselfish activity without any selfish motive is a way of feeding our mind with good food. Any unselfish activity will generate spiritual asset. So this is a very important principle. We know very well that mind affects the way we work, but our work also has a direct effect on our mind. If a person goes on doing good work, even mechanically, something good for others or good for himself, his mind will become calm and quiet. His mind slowly turns to be his friend. That means mind is slowly becoming friendly with us. How do we judge whether mind is a friend or enemy? Easily, it's very easy to test. Suppose not spirituality, I'm not talking about meditation or yoga. Let us say a doctor tell us every day we must go for a walk in the morning, or we must be careful about certain food that we eat or may not be eating. Now, when we try to practice this, at the beginning, the mind is resisting. Or, to give a better example, suppose you take a decision, tomorrow onwards, I shall meditate at 7 o'clock in the morning. When 7 o'clock comes, well, I would rather begin tomorrow, not today. We may postpone. That's because the samskaras, tendencies or impressions that you already gathered, accumulated in the mental system, they don't permit you to start meditation. But on the other hand, if you persist in an effort to meditate every day morning, 7 o'clock, then slowly you find the resistance uh, decreases. What happens is, when we take to spiritual life, yoga way of life, two personalities coming in contact. The first personality, the personality that did not meditate till today. And then when you try to start meditation from today onwards, another personality, a higher personality, begins to emerge. And then what happens? This conflict. As days go on, you find the conflicts get decreased slowly. By slow degrees, the conflicts begin to decrease. That's because the secondary personality, the higher personality, a personality that enjoys meditation, is emerging and becoming stronger and stronger. That's why at the beginning of spiritual life, one should go by slow degrees. And as we emerge further, our personality, secondary personality emerges, and we are able to meditate, we are able to practice spiritual disciplines much more easily. So in the commentary, Vyasa makes a very interesting observation of the functions of the mental world of all human beings. So he says there are 5 layers of the mind: Kshiptam, Mudam, Vikshiptam, Ekagram, Niruddham. These are Sanskrit terms. I shall try to explain. The first 2 stages of mind belong to the abnormal level. One is in the morons, for example, or people suffering from bipolar or inner conflicts and phobias belong to Kshipta and Muda state, which I'm not dealing with. The third category is Vikshipta. Very interesting observation. Well, suppose where we go to a church or a temple, or we listen to a spiritual conversation, we feel very happy. We listen to devotional music, we're very happy, and we are overjoyed. But when we leave the church or temple, return home, again mind is back to where it was. Next day, again, you may go to the church or a temple, any spiritual place. When we are listening to, let's say, spiritual music, we are able to feel tranquility and peace. But again, when we are back to our home, that is gone. That's because mind is called mind in a state of vikshipta. Vikshipta state is often compared to the pendulum of a clock. Pendulum never stops. It goes this way, that way. It never stops anywhere. For some time, we are able to enjoy great peace of mind, but we are not able to continue that. Again, we are back to square one. This happens. So, as we persist in our spiritual life, he says we reach a higher level of mental world. That's ekagra, means where we are able to concentrate on meditation or any spiritual discipline without any conflict. In the early stage, we are able to enjoy peace of mind within the temple, within the church, or when we read a good book. But after some time, when you're back to our home, we lose that peace of mind. Next day, again, when we come to the temple or church, we are able to enjoy the same peace of mind. Vikshipta means wave, like a pendulum clock, it moves from one to another end. As we persist further, what happens is the secondary personality, the personality, our own inner mind, which is now getting slowly acquainted with meditation, higher spiritual values, that personality becomes stronger and stronger. And the other personality, which opposed meditation, which created conflicts when you try to meditate, it slowly becomes weaker and weaker. This is how we slowly turn our mind into our best friend. And surprisingly, you find in the Yoga Sutra literature, there is no elaborate description of pranayama. One of the most remarkable contributions of the commentators, Vijnana Bhikshu and Vajaspati, Shankara, Vyasa, they wrote these great commentaries: Vyasa Bhashya, Shankara's Vivarana, then Yoga Bhashya Vartigam, all these great books. Now, some of them were Buddhist actually. Some of the commentators were Yogacara. They followed they were the followers of the idealistic school of Jnanavada or Yogacara system of this tradition. So, one important warning that many of the yoga teachers give again and again is against pranayama. This may be news to many of the people practicing pranayama. They say anyone who practices pranayama without the direction of a real teacher and without following some of the fundamental disciplines with regard to food, association, and so on, if they practice pranayama, that can be dangerous. Bhranti darshana is mentioned as an important problem. You can link this Bhranti darshana into different kinds of delusions, especially delusions of grandeur. You can find today, if you can, people who practice pranayama, suddenly they feel, I am like Christ, I want to teach the world. You can find this. This was first noticed by a great teacher who was responsible for popularization of yogasanas also, the great Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, the founder of Divine Life Society. When he first introduced the pranayama, so not long elaborate pranayama, when he introduced in Rishikesh, he found many people who were overdoing it started showing symptoms of delusions of grandeur. So Patanjali emphasizes this point again and again. Any kind of activity, including pranayama, means breath exercises, especially inner retention, called antakumbhaka, means keeping the breath within, is called antakumbhaka, inner retention, can hyperactivate our body system. It can hyperactivate some of the nadis called nervous points. And this can cause generation of excessive energy, which can lead to mind wandering and also different kinds of bipolar problems, he said. So, turning our mind into a best friend should be done in a very, very slow, stage by stage process, not all of a sudden, because any kind of any practice that involves artificial attempts to generate certain mental conditions, as if you go to the United States, you find there are people who commercially try to raise your kundalini, and most of them end up uh, facing problems of either delusions of persecution or delusions of grandeur. So, and then Patanjali analyzes this mystery of human mind in the light of a very interesting metaphor. He's the wheel, I mean, karma, vritti, samskara, sankalpa, vasana, chakram. The Sanskrit terms, as I explained. A wheel, let us think of a wheel, a circuit, so to speak. Whatever you do, any action that you engage in creates two types of result. It's called karma. Suppose you help a person, you do a charity, that person is benefited. That is very obvious. And you also feel a kind of inner contentment and joy. I have done something sensible. So, two types of results. One result which is invisible, which you feel, you help a person. Even if you help a person, a blind man, to cross the street, and you return home, you feel, oh, I've done something sensible. Or you feel, well, there is a kind of natural calamity taking place maybe thousands of miles away. You send a check for $100. That day you may be able to enjoy better sleep, because any kind of activity that has an element of unselfishness and compassion will generate a spiritual asset in our mental system. That is the invisible. The visible result is somebody is benefited by that. The opposite also is true. When we do something wrong, something evil, that will bite our mind. That day you won't be able to sleep properly if a normal person. So both ways it works. So any noble activity will produce a spiritual energy system in our mind. And then that becomes a vritti. Vritti means the residual effect of whatever you do. That is not visible. This inner contentment is a vritti. And whenever we do something that produces a happy result, we will have a tendency to do it again. And whenever our action produces an unhappy result, we will have a tendency to avoid doing it again. So that's why uh, this action becomes a tendency or residual effect. Residual effect. It's called vritti. Vasana is a strong tendency, a tendency that is deep rooted. You may have seen people, children born with some inborn vasanas, impressions coming from previous life, for music, for art, many skills. There are child prodigies. A child, if you are a school teacher, if you go to a school, maybe 100 students, suddenly you find one student demonstrates extraordinary skills, prodigious skills in mathematics or any science for the matter. Maybe you may wonder, maybe his parents are teachers. May not be. His parents may be illiterate. And there was no mathematician, no professor, no academician in his family. But the child demonstrates extremely, uh, unbelievable skills and natural tendencies, which helps him to excel in many, many areas, in that specific area. But because of vasanas, because of samskaras and tendencies coming from previous life. So we have to remember Patanjali's system, yoga philosophy, yoga way of life cannot be properly understood unless we believe in these two important doctrines. One is the law of karma and the doctrine of reincarnation, rebirth. Life is not just one chance, not a full stop. Life is on death is not a full stop. Death is only semicolon or a comma. It is only you may go from here to another city, you take another flight, take a layover, another flight, another connection flight. So according to Patanjali, he says many of these tendencies, vasanas, samskaras, impressions are coming from previous life cycles. When we when we display a tendency to do certain things in a way that we cannot help doing that, and when we do it, we feel a great inner joy. That tendency is coming from previous life. So karma, vritti, vasana. Sankalpa. Sankalpa, this means according to this tendency, we take a decision and we try to do certain things, or we may avoid doing certain things depending upon our previous experiences. So this circuit or this wheel, karma leads to tendencies, impressions, aptitudes, and attitudes, which again prompt similar actions. So again, these tendencies get strengthened and solidified, reinforced, and get accumulated in the mental system. It's called the chittam. So what we are nothing but our samskaras, our impressions, our tendencies that constitute our mental world. But then Patanjali says that we can change our own destiny. That's a very important principle in yoga psychology. We can build our own destiny. And one important principle in yoga is you can always start a new life any day, any moment, according to your will. Of course, if somebody tells you, oh, tomorrow onwards you should read Sermon on the Mount every day, or Bhagavad Gita every day, well, our mind will not permit you. Suppose you are sitting in a room, a library room, with all magazines and books. The library may have plenty of many number of copies of the Buddhist scriptures, Jewish scriptures, Hindu scriptures, Christian, wonderful books. But what we read when nobody is noticing will be according to our own samskaras. That's the point. So, at the same time, physically we have more freedom. What we want to read, what we are reading may be a choice of our mind, and mind is not always willing to cooperate. Because the moment you take Sermon on the Mount, suddenly mind is full of conflicts. When we read this in a newspaper or some thriller or something, mind is very happy. So there is no choice for us at the mental level. But at the physical level, we have a choice. If we cannot meditate, we cannot read a good book, we can go and clean a public place, a church or a temple, a public place that will be beneficial to others. Without any publicity, nobody is taking a photograph. But still, if we do some kind of noble activity, an act of any act of compassion, generosity, uh, that becomes a spiritual activity. And that produces a kind of invisible result, a spiritual asset. So anyone who continuously engages in some kind of good activity, that person will eventually be able to accumulate a huge quantity of what you call sattva or spiritual energy, spiritual assets. And slowly our mind will become less and less unfriendly and more friendly. Even how do we judge our mind? As I mentioned earlier, how do we judge our friends? Suppose a friend tells you, let us go and take drugs. He's definitely not your best friend. So a friend tells you, let us do some violence, terrible things. Certainly he wants to see you within the police trap. Suppose a friend tells you, it's not good to take drugs. You should quit this drug addiction or alcoholism. You should rather do some good things. That friend is your best friend. So also our mind. When we try to meditate, if our mind is willing, okay, go and meditate. Your mind is encouraging you. Mind is calm and quiet, doesn't disturb you. That mind is your best friend. Not only meditation, even when we try to do something good for our own material advancement, then also we need a friendly mind. An unfriendly mind is a terrible source of problem. It's a scourge of our life. So when we try to do something good, that's good for us, that is necessary for us, that will help us in our life, that mind which is willing to cooperate, that mind is smiling at you when you do something that is eventually good for you. That mind is a best friend. A mind that is not willing to cooperate, a mind is only happy when you do something terrible for yourself, that mind is your worst enemy. So Patanjali's whole purpose is to help you to turn your mind into your best friend. And I shall conclude this discussion. I think there will be 50 minutes interaction. You are most welcome to ask questions. I shall try to respond to these questions. In the Kaivalya Pada, Patanjali mentions a very, very important point, that nimittam aprayojagam prakritinam varana bhedastu tata kshetrigavat. It is a very long sutra. Normally, Patanjali doesn't use metaphors and allegories or illustrations in his sutra. But in this context, he uses kshetrigavat. Kshetriga means a farmer. So he says, suppose a farmer is trying to irrigate his field, and there is 1 mile distance from the field to the river from where he wants to bring water. Now, Patanjali says the farmer is not digging a canal. A canal is only removing the soil, the sand in that area. Or another example, suppose you try to you try to construct a statue of Buddha. You're given a granite block, sculpture. What you are doing is you're chiseling out, removing all unnecessary parts from the granite block. The result is a Buddha. Like that, we don't do anything, we only remove obstacles. In the example of the Yoga Sutra, Kshetrika Pada. Kshetrika means farmer. Kshetra means farmland or maybe field. What the farmer is doing is not cutting a canal. What he's doing is he is removing the sand or the soil from that part of the earth where the canal is running. In other words, we are already tranquil, peace, healthy, calm, and quiet. What happens? A lot of foreign bodies have entered into our mental world. Just like, a thorn has pierced through your feet. So we remove all the foreign bodies, all these unnatural things. The result is our true nature. Our true nature is that we are healthy. Prasanna mindriya manaha. When our mind is calm and quiet, without any effort, means effortlessly, in a state of perfect calmness, quietude, and tranquility, without any disturbance. That state of mind, it can look upon pain and pressure, good and bad, profit and loss, with the same equanimity of mind. The positive psychology, in my opinion, it is a big fake. Because suppose you have a patient has got cancer, you think you have no cancer, you be happy. I tell you, I shall finish this by giving an example. When I was giving a discussion on this point, a retreat at the Satipatthana Sutta, that's the original source of mindfulness. It's a Satipatthana Sutta is a Pali canonical work, Buddha's discourse on mindfulness. They called Pali, Sati means Smriti, Upasthana means Upasthana, Sutra. Sutta means Sutra. Now, somebody raised this question. He had gone for a management, big business executive program. And there he had to stand up and lift his hand and say, I will succeed, I will succeed. And every session, one day he had to pay $500 in a very posh, luxurious setting. Now, and you're taught that you are never going to lose money. Your business is never going to collapse. It's always going to make profits. It's impossible. Because you can never expect anything in this world to continuously succeed all the time. Every unhappiness is followed by happiness. Frequently, we forget that unhappiness also is impermanent, so we become unhappy. We should remember this as happiness is impermanent, not everlasting. Unhappiness also is impermanent. So, the ability to look at happiness and unhappiness with the same equanimity of mind, that's a sign of a healthy mind. It doesn't mean that you remain inactive or unresponsive or indifferent, not at all. You try to solve the problem with all enthusiasm, with all efficiency, with all purpose, and with all success. At the same time, don't ever expect that the same happy situation will be permanent. That's a big lie. So, Patanjali is not asking you to look at everything in a positive way. He's asking you to look at positive and negative with the same equanimity of mind. If you should not be shocked when something unhappy happens. Also, you should not be overjoyed when something happy happens. We should be able to lift our mind away and above happiness unhappiness equation. Because if you are always looking for happiness, positive, you'll be shocked when you get unhappiness. If you're always looking for happiness, always profit in the business, never a loss, then you are heading for disaster because it's impossible. So the actual purpose of Patanjali is to turn your mind into a best friend and philosopher and guide by enabling you to look at both good and bad, profit and loss, happiness and unhappiness with the same equanimity of mind at the same time without being inactive or unresponsive. You should be active, efficient, but don't forget the fact that the same situation will not continue for all time. Anyway, I think I've just tried to give bird view of some aspects of yoga, way of life. You are most welcome with questions. I tried to answer. Okay, thank you.
I've got two questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, most welcome. Yeah.
Yes.
We look at the phone. Oh, okay. No need. Please, no need. No, please continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. There are two things which struck me.
Yeah.
One was the absence of God. And the second thing was the unity of all human beings.
Yeah.
was not mentioned. In
I tell you. So, first of all, the unity of humanity is an Advaitic Vedantic concept. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is Astika only in the sense that it doesn't deny the Vedas. Patanjali doesn't recognize a monotheistic created God. Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. He said that Va means Vikalpa. Or he says, if you cannot practice any of these things, you can do Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara, according to Patanjali, is not what we normally use the word monotheistic God. He says advanced spiritual souls who already reached the Samadhi level. That's the concept of Patanjali. Patanjali's system is linked to Sankhya philosophy. Yeah. So that Purushas, advanced enlightened souls, not a created God. But the commentators, like Shankaracharya says, he talks about prapatti. The great Advaitin scholar, he talks about prapatti. He says, when he interprets pranidhana as prapatti means saranagati, I mean self-surrender. If you surrender yourself to God completely, then you close the bargain, then you become an instrument in the hands of a higher power, then you cannot fall, you cannot make a mistake. That itself is enough. That is a substitute for all yamas and niyamas. That is not Patanjali, that is a commentator who came later. So your question is very relevant. Second point is humanity. Now, Patanjali's system is more, we call it technology, not metaphysics of Vedanta. Patanjali's Yamaniyamas, Ashtanga Yoga, Yamaniyamasana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. That more or less runs parallel to Buddha's Tattwari Arya Sattva and Four Noble Truths and 8 disciplines. And also it also is a parallel in a way to Sadhana Dharishta Sambhati of Advaitis. So Patanjali's system is theistic only in the sense that it doesn't deny the Vedas, but it doesn't recognize the Vedas as much as Vedanta or Mimamsa does. That's the point. Thank you for the question. Yeah. Again, I will repeat once more. The commentators who came after Patanjali, non-Buddhist commentators. Remember, there are 2 schools of commentators in Patanjali's system. Buddhists were great practitioners of yoga. Yogachara system of Vasubandhu, Asanga. Asanga wrote a well-known book, Yogachara Bhumi, famous book on Yogachara Vijnanavada system. Vasubandhu wrote Vijnapti Matrada Siddhi. All these are very, very close to many of the ideas in yoga tradition because some of them were great practitioners of yoga, and they were all agnostics, not believers in God. So you can find influence of Buddhist agnosticism in Patanjali's system. But Shankaracharya is a great Advaitin Bhakta. He brings the idea of property. Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there any relation?
Yeah. Please continue. Yeah.
Patanjali with the Yoga Sutra?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you. So this is very, very relevant question. I didn't get time to begin with. So, Patanjali made a great contribution to 3 branches of learning: yoga, Vyakarana, and Ayurveda. So according to tradition, that book is not yet discovered. Patanjali wrote a commentary on Charaka Sutras, Ayurveda, and Patanjali wrote Mahabhashya, the most extensive commentary on Panini's grammar. And also he wrote this Yoga Sutra. So Kayena Vacha, that's when see, Patanjali wrote something for the human body, or the Ayurveda, for the mind, yoga, for the speech, that is Bhashya. Where, language can be elevated to a philosophy of communication. Patanjali is the first great teacher. This is very interesting, the evolution of Indian philology. Panini wrote this Ashtadhyayi. Patanjali in Mahabhashya, he elevates language as a divine tool. He says language can civilize you, and if you go on speaking good words, it cannot help making you a more civilized person. So he wrote Mahabhashya for cleansing the death of our speech. And he wrote Ayurveda for cleansing the human body. And he wrote Yoga Sutra for cleaning up our mind. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Same Patanjali. Yeah, thank you. Patanjali Mahabhashyam, the most important extensive commentary work on Panini Vyakarana. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
All paths lead to the same realization as per Thakur. So the thing is, as per yoga, it's basically calming down the mind, right? Like in meditation, yoga, you calm down the mind. But the thing is, like without a knowledge, like in Advaitic sense, we consider ourselves as the witness. So we go through a lot of learning through the scriptures to understand like what it actually is, and then we sit to meditation. But here, like, how do both the realizations, like, how do both of the paths lead to the same realization?
The supreme teacher of Advaita, Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya does not consider Yoga Sutra as a way that takes you to the highest spiritual realization. Patanjali, the highest goal of Ashtanga Yoga is Samadhi. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. The Samadhi, according to Advaitins, is only Chitta Shuddhi. It prepares the mind for higher meditation. It is not the supreme goal. It's a little like let's say in the Shankaracharya's commentary, he says, Karma nisthaya ka chitta siddharena pushartha hedu na swadintrena jnana nisthadu swadintrena pushartha hedu anyana apeksha. I should translate very fast. Don't worry about the in Sanskrit quotation. What it means is, when you practice karma yoga, when you practice yoga, all this can help you to reach a point where your mind is ready, fit for higher meditation, which can take you to the highest spiritual realization. So Advaitins and Vedanta do not consider Patanjali's system as the goal. Patanjali's system became so popular in modern times partly because it doesn't give you any theological burden. Even if you don't believe in God, if you're an agnostic, if you're a good human being, you can understand the greatness of Patanjali. And if you reach that level of mental purity that Patanjali is talking about, then eventually you will think of the higher reality, God. You can't miss that point. So the greatness of Patanjali's system, the reason why it became so popular, especially after the Second World War, a number of great Americans and European teachers went to Far Eastern countries. They brought Buddhism, from China, Japan, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Burma, all these places. Buddhist monasteries came to be established after Tibet, after China's invasion of Tibet in 1959. Tibetan teachers also flooded Western world. So they brought Buddhism, and what happens, that also in a way led to the popularization of yoga. So both are somewhat agnostic. So when you're talking about God realization, Patanjali doesn't deny that, but is not a great proponent of that kind of monotheistic idea. Remember, he was a great man, but that is not his focus. His focus is, well, how to live in this world a happy life so that you can do your work properly, but keeping your mind pure. That itself takes you a long way towards God realization. Okay, thank you.
So I suppose should conclude the session now. It's a very interesting talk, Maharaji, and very interesting perspective as well, what positive psychology means. It's not just the positive, but equanimity of your mind for positive and negative, but also like elevating the mind and cleansing it to the stage where you can actually then seek the actual truth and so on. And we're really grateful for all the insights that you have provided
you.
us.
Thank you.
And I also feel the historical thing that you added at the end, like what happened after the Second World War and
Yeah.
Patanjali Yoga Sutra, how it actually
Yeah.
became so popular, like worldwide, and the Chinese invasion of Tibet and subsequent
Precisely.
effect is interesting,
Yeah.
actually.
Yoga Sutra teaches you how to become a good human being.
Yeah.
You may believe in God or not, it's wonderful. But how to become a good human being? Because all people who believe in God are not necessarily good human beings. That's a problem. There's a problem we are facing every day today. So, how to become a good human being? Whether with God or without God. That is the greatness of Patanjali, and that is a great attraction in modern world. How to become a good human being, to have compassion for everyone around. That's a great thing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So we'll try to feed our mind after we go out of this lecture with all good things.
Yeah.
And so with that, maybe I'd request Swami Shantipratanandaji, who is the minister in charge of Ramakrishna Vedanta Center in Ireland, to give a vote of thanks and conclude the session, please. Dear friends, we are at the end of the event. Swamiji beautifully put for 45 minutes is a quite an interesting journey. Probably, if I can summarize or oversimplify his 45 minutes of very scholastic talk, probably I had heard that there can be an accident when you don't mind the train. So similarly, there can be life accident if you don't train the mind. So mind the train and train the mind. So the whole of our life is what? Training the mind. Once your mind is trained, you can be happy at all given point of times, at all given circumstances. For that, Patanjali gives a very scientific approach, and without, again, quote unquote, without believing a God or without believing any religion, you can be scientific, you can be rational, but at the same time, you can be a good human being and you can tame your mind and you can be a successful person in whatever field. And for that, Patanjali Yoga Sutra gives a roadmap. And Swamiji told beautifully, starting with Kriya Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, using that, how can we tame our mind, how can we regulate our life, and how can we be happy. So on behalf of Ramakrishna Vedanta Center and this Trinity College, I convey my reverential pranams and thanks to Swami Tattwamayananda, Minister in charge of San Francisco Vedanta Center. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
And thank you for all of you to come in the midst of the holiday. We all know that Trinity, we have got a holiday now. In spite of holiday, we have got this many audience, and around 11 people were there in the online also. 11 people who couldn't come in person. Some of them, they expressed their apologies for some reasons they were unable to come. Around 11 people also they attended online. Thank you for all the attendees who attended the talk and be the part of this intellectual journey. Thank you.